Welcome back to the Magellan Podcast, Navigating Education in the 21st Century. Here, the Magellan Learning Solutions partners Wayne Patton, Aaron Traphagen, and Emily Hetty talk about the biggest questions and issues in higher education. Students learn better when they engage with course materials as whole people, thinking, feeling, culturally rich individuals. In the online classroom in particular, though, achieving this sort of affective engagement can be challenging. Designing online curriculum to create effective engagement may take effort, but it pays dividends, not only in student learning outcomes, but in multiple other areas. Affectively aware courses, for example, honor the diversity of experiences that students bring to the online classroom. And as that happens, students in the group as a whole have an opportunity to increase their cultural awareness, to learn ways to communicate with others who are not like them, and to self-reflect on their own positions and ideas. For today's podcast, which follows our white paper, Affective Learning in the Online Classroom, we welcome Dr. Gina Southall, Associate Vice President for Online Education at Magellan, to discuss ways to create effective engagement online. Gina brings decades of experience as an educator, both residentially and online, and as an administrator within teacher education programs. Magellan partner Emily Hetty will join her in this conversation.
Well, welcome, Gina. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am flying solo today. Wayne and Aaron are out attending to other things. We are super busy right now, super busy, and that's a good thing for us. We should have some pretty exciting client news coming out in the next few weeks. We invite you all to pay attention to that as it's moving forward. But for now, we are scrambling hard to stand up some systems and do some communicating, and all of this before the holiday deadline. We are recording this podcast right before Christmas. In fact, we have had our annual viewing of Emmett Otter's Christmas special today. That's something that Aaron has enriched our lives with over the last several years. So we did that. We had lunch. We got a little holiday party coming up. And we are just glad to be together. I'm especially glad today to have Gina with me. Gina Southall and I, we go back a little ways.
A little bit,
yeah. We worked together in a former life, not directly so, but we crossed paths.
Definitely.
So it's really a privilege for us to have you on the team here. When we had this position come open, I thought, I know someone, and thankfully all the dominoes lined up, and you were here. Have been here for a while now and doing awesome work with us. So I'm really grateful to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role.
Sure. So thanks for having me. I started out in the high school English classroom, middle school and high school English classroom, and did that for about 6 years, and got my master's degree during that time. And I had a faculty member in my master's program say, "Have you ever thought about getting your doctorate?" And I said, "Well, not until today, but okay." So took a little break from the high school classroom and did the doctoral work, and was very fortunate to be hired at my alma mater for my undergrad and my master's, which is Longwood University, and took a position there in 2006 as English education faculty member, and pretty quickly became the program coordinator for secondary English education. From there, transferred to the Director of Liberal Studies, which was the largest major on campus, elementary, middle, and special education pre-service teachers. And from there, transitioned to being the director of all the teacher preparation programs. My last few years at Longwood, I was there for a total of 16 years. In 2021, my husband and I were sort of reevaluating things, as one did after COVID, and decided that we wanted to make a move to our dream retirement location, but we just wanted it to be our dream life location. So we moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And I spent a little bit of time teaching in the community college system while I was there, learned a lot, really kind of reimagined myself as a teacher, and really solidified myself as an online educator, because I had had some online experience before, but really had a lot of online teaching opportunities at the community college system in North Carolina. And as Emily said, when she contacted me about this faculty mentor position, I said, yep, I think that's for me. So I've been with Magellan Learning Solutions since March, and am really excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Very glad to have you here. So we've been working on this white paper about effective learning, and I'll just say a little bit about where it came from, and I'll also say Gina played a huge role in getting this thing to the website for us. So thank you for that. So when you talk about online learning, if you go Googling around or searching for online programs, they tend to emphasize things like convenience and flexibility and quick outcomes and things like that. And all of that is absolutely true, and it's a good thing. But if you're someone like me, and I'm one of the more traditional of the Magellan partners in terms of how my education looked, and yours looked pretty traditional too. Went to a 4-year residential undergraduate, had a residential graduate experience. When I see language like that, sometimes I feel a little bit sad. I want those things for students, but I also want them to have that kind of whole person learning experience that I had and that I feel was life changing. Now, I realize some of that is that I was 18 or 19, and that's life change time, right? So affective learning happens a lot at that time, but it doesn't have to not happen just because you're studying online. And you learn better when you're learning as a whole person. So I just got kind of interested in what would it look like to do whole person learning online, affective learning. So let me just shoot this out as a kind of question now. In this kind of online context, or outside of just the 18-year-old going to college and having big feelings about everything they're learning and their major and all of that, what is affective learning? What are some ways it shows up?
I think affective learning is just considering the student as a person and not just a body either in a classroom or logging into a learning management system. This is a person and people with varying degrees of experiences, varying degrees of previous education, both in a traditional classroom as well as in the world of work. Different geographical backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, just a whole variety of any kind of diversity that you can come up with. These are the students that are in front of you on your screen. And you have to really consider who are these people and what do they need to learn, and not just learn the content that's specific to the course that you're teaching, but what's the transferability? How are they going to take these skills and take this knowledge and say, okay, what does this mean for me in the context of this class, but then after this class? And so how can I learn this content and show that I know this content, but also work with the people that are in this course? And as a faculty member of an online course, we have the responsibility of giving them these experiences to be able not only to show what they've learned and what their perspective is on what they've learned, but also thinking in a really deliberate way about other people's perspectives on this content, on these ideas, and maybe even disagreeing some. I love it when that happens in my classrooms, or I love it when that happens in my online classes when my students disagree. I just commented, I'm teaching a couple of online classes now, and I just commented on a student's post this week that I really congratulated her for being willing to disagree with one of her classmates, because one of her classmates had put on a discussion board this quote that she really, really agreed with from something that we were reading. And this other student came back and said, nope, I don't agree. And here's why that doesn't fly in my current classroom where I'm teaching right now. And I thought, oh my gosh, the good stuff is happening, right? They're applying what I want them to do. So it's just thinking about the student and having the students think not only about the content, like I said, but how does it apply in their lives, and how can they learn from each other and make those connections with each other. That if you, as the faculty members, you and the instructor set that up for them to have opportunities to do that, the traditional online learner, I feel, will then take that and run with it and start doing it for themselves.
So do you think, and I know we're going to get practical pretty fast in this because we both tend to think in examples.
Right?
Yeah, you more than me. Yeah. And I've got an example lined up, but do you think that online students are ready and willing to talk about their personal experiences, or do you think it's something that you have to kind of help them acclimate?
Well, I think as in any classroom, you're going to have a variety. You're going to have some who are willing to tell you as a student, I'm thinking about myself. I'll tell you anything you want to know. I have no problem sharing. But some students, I just had a conversation with my sister on the way here. She is not that person. Mm-hmm. She, even I, as her sister, I'm still pulling things out of her, shout out to my sister. Love her. But I think you just have to figure out, and that's tougher to do really in an online space because you don't see those people in front of you and you don't read that body language. So you have to give them the opportunities to be able to share for the folks who are super willing and coax out of the ones who need more time. And that's also why you're really strategic in building your assignments, because each one maybe is going to require a little more. And then when the students are getting that good feedback from you as well as their peers, then that confidence builds and okay, next time I'll give a little more. Next time I'm going to do a little more. So you're still thinking of students where they are as individuals and hoping that you're going to have that. Yes, these are the folks who are going to be setting the examples from the get-go because they're super willing to share. And then the other ones, if you're giving them that space, both with, like I said, with your feedback and with opportunity for their peers to comment and congratulate them or question them as well, most of them are going to come along for the ride.
That's good. Yeah, I'm thinking about, there was this assignment that I used to teach in, it was a intro to British literature class, and a couple of old English teachers here. So
yeah.
Affective learning's pretty easy when you're reading literature.
Yes, it is.
It's really not hard. But I taught Andrew Marvell's poem To His Coy Mistress, which is it's a Carpe Diem poem. It's basically like, let's get down to business. You know, we're going to die, so we need to take advantage of time and do all the fun things now. And that's a really, really fun sort of literature to teach with 19-year-olds. Because, you know, they see like a world of possibility in front of them. And when I say seize the day, what day should I not seize? I'm 19. I can seize all of them. Well, I'm not that now. I'm like 47. And I could be an online student pretty easily.
Right.
And when I read a poem like that now, I think, this is really stupid. Not that it's a stupid poem, but just the idea of it. But it's also not. It's just that I need to reframe the conversation. Now, if you were my English teacher, which you could have been maybe back in the day someday, I think you're actually not enough older than me to have been
not that much.
No, not that much. Only teeny tiny
Maybe a little bit.
a teeny little bit. I think I would have probably needed you to maybe do some exercises to maybe help me get to a place where either I apply it to my life or I apply it to a situation I might be able to imagine. So that I can think about what a day that one might seize might look like, and I can make the connections there. Does that make sense? I know that's a little...
absolutely. Yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking just in a situation where you have students, you know, the first assignment, and if you even call it an assignment, really, the first task students very often have in an online class is to introduce themselves. Well, some student, you know, maybe even provide a picture. Some students are going to provide, you know, an array of photos and 4 paragraphs. And some students are going to provide no picture and say, my name is Sally, and I'm glad when these 8 weeks will be over. And I think as the instructor's job, I feel it's my responsibility to say, where do you work? Do you have children? Where do you live? What's the best vacation you've ever been on? You engage with them. And then if you ask them to comment on ask each other questions, even if they're not super into that, providing that information at first, they're going to get there. And so it's taking that, looking at that assignment, like you're saying, like, this is dumb, because they're in a different space in their life. Then I see that as a challenge. That's an opportunity for me to say, okay, how do I make this not seem like just a box you have to check? How do I make this seem like something that's really going to provide a great framework for us to have a great learning experience together? So
I think what I'm hearing you say is you have to actually teach the class.
You do have to teach the class. You have to put the time in. It is not a, you know, cut the computer on and see how it rolls. You have to you have to comment, you have to provide feedback. It is time consuming, but it's worth it. And once you do it for a while, you know, you build almost a feedback bank that you can use. You know, I love to use students' own words. One of my favorite ways to give feedback that's very personal, I think, and pretty low stress is to pull out a quote from something a student wrote and say, this is really interesting. I'd love to hear more about this. I think this is a really great idea. Could you develop it a little bit more in our next whatever assignment? Think about this for our final, you know, summative project. I really think you can build on this. So that's great feedback. And that took me 30 seconds. So it is a practice skill, I think, as an instructor, but that's what teaching is. Whether you're in a face-to-face classroom or an online environment, it's trial and error. You see what works, and what worked for that section of the class that I taught in the spring might not work for the one in the fall, and that's okay, because you as the teacher have the instructor have the responsibility to figure out what does work, because your students deserve that.
So we'll talk about assignment design in a few minutes, and there's a ton you have to do with assignment design to set this up to work right, and it's not hard. It's just you have to be deliberate about it.
Right.
One of the challenges with online teaching is that you can't pivot quickly in the same way that you can when you have a live class in front of you. I mean, I like to have my whole class already built in the LMS and Canvas or Blackboard or whatever before I go to teach. I like to have all my rubrics in there. If a student wants to work ahead, I'm generally okay with that, with a few exceptions. Some things need to happen in time. But the pieces like the regular and substantive interaction pieces, right? The discussion board responses, the announcements, the things where you're actively interacting with the students, the assignment feedback. That's where the power of effective learning really happens online. At least I think that may be what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what do you do? And I don't have an answer to this. I hope you do. What if I'm teaching math? It's really, like I said, it's easy when you're teaching literature. I have all kinds of feelings about math, but they're not necessarily affective learning kinds of feelings. They're just feelings, maybe not helpful ones. How would we maybe incorporate some of these aspects, do you think?
As an English teacher, this may not be a popular opinion, but it is mine. As an English teacher, I think we are all teachers of communication, no matter if our content of focus is math, science, whatever. So not only, I think, are you doing the math and asking students to learn and demonstrate that they have the understanding of the mathematical concepts, but how do you know that when you sort of got it, right? How might you explain it to someone else? So I think there are opportunities for reflection. How might you use this concept in another course? How do you see this connecting to another course or a life experience that you've had? So you could just focus on the math problems, I guess. But I think the real sort of affective piece and the collaborative piece is having students share how this, again, that transfer. Where does this go? Have I seen similar concepts in the past? How can I use these in the future? Whether it's other classes, the world of work, my life, and then have students share their experiences. So I think it's the reflection piece, and that could be done in a typical writing assignment, or you could have students just record themselves talking about it. And then, learning management systems have amazing different features with that kind of opportunities, those kind of opportunities that you can use. So I think just to have them record their process, or, what are my next steps here? Or how am I going to use this? And then have peers respond that way. Just getting them that next step in their thinking and that communication, to me, and I admittedly, as you said, we are not math teachers, but I think that's the place I would go to add that affective piece.
That makes sense. I like that. I took a stats class, a postdoc stats class, because at one point I was running a writing center and I realized I didn't know how to analyze the data well enough to prove that we were actually helping students do better in the class. So I took a class, and the instructor was great. It was an educational statistics class, and we did some pure math in the class. And you have to do it. You can't not do the math. But he would do a lot of things asking us to think about contexts in which we would use it, like you're saying. One of the analyses we did was about the effects of free lunch programs on learning outcomes. And he didn't have to do that. He could have just said, let's look at correlations and see if they're there. But he gave us a data set from Chicago Public Schools and had us analyze it. And then we had to spend time talking about whether it was really the free lunch programs that caused that or whether there were other environmental factors. And I don't know that he was going for affective learning there, but he got it.
Yeah.
Because in that class, which was an online class, students on the discussion board were saying things like, yes, but we need to look at who's coming from single-parent homes.
Right.
We need to look at this factor and that factor and this other factor. And nobody got confessional at any point. Nobody was saying, well, in my life, such and such. Right. But people were deeply engaged with this kind of emotionally hefty material about what happens when you have a kid who's at an economic disadvantage and you help them. Does the help really help?
And I would be willing to bet that most of those examples came from a personal experience, whether really personally or personally adjacent. And that's why they found that noteworthy, and that's why they made that comment, because it was something that was important to them in some degree in their life.
Yeah.
And they, like you said, they may not have had to own it, but it was something that was triggered. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, this was pre-COVID. I live in a town that's it's fairly rural, and the school district ended up putting everybody on free lunch during COVID, which happened at a lot of places because it was administratively easier and cheaper for them to do that than to try to figure out who actually got free lunch and who didn't. And I remember thinking back to that class at the time, like, oh my goodness, the size of the government machinery that has to move to make this run. That's a math problem from 2008 that stuck with me and that I brought into that analysis later. And then I thought, I wonder what the effects were of free lunch on the students who didn't actually qualify for it.
Right.
Was that a good thing?
Right.
And my kids were getting free lunch. We didn't qualify, but they didn't really like the lunch as well as the lunch I packed. But I think there were communal experiences that were happening because of it. So anyway, I think that's a powerful way to think about it. And again, nobody's confessing anything. Yep. Nobody has to be emotionally out there with anything. It's math class. On the other hand, it was emotional.
Yes.
And it was real.
Yes. That's a great assignment. Assignment.
Yeah. He was smart.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah. I'll recommend that class. Educational Statistics 581. Okay. Yeah.
At Magellan Learning Solutions, our mission is to help our clients' educational missions with tailored curricular and operational solutions to help them thrive. To meet the accompanying challenges, the experts at Magellan Learning Solutions offer a full spectrum of services in the areas of curriculum development, operational administration, training and professional development, enrollment and marketing, or custom solutions to niche projects. Whether managing turnkey projects, consulting, or acting as a force multiplier, our experience and relational approach will help your team attain its goals. For all your educational needs, think Magellan. Visit us at thinkmagellan.com today and set up an introductory meeting.
This kind of brings us to our next kind of set of questions. And diversity, equity, inclusion, these have been buzzwords lately. And without having to be political about it, I think we all say the diversity of the online classroom, it's a wonderful opportunity and it's a difficult challenge. As opposed to your traditional residential freshman composition class where you get some diversity, but for the most part, students come from a geographically similar area. Students are a similar age, often from a similar background, if it's a local university especially. Online's all over the place, and literally all over the place, like all over the world in many cases. So how do we approach affective learning in a context like that? Like how can it help? How can it be a challenge to do when there's so much diversity? What do we gain? What do we lose?
I'm thinking about one of the classes that I'm finishing up for this semester, and it's a school in Georgia that has a fairly robust, totally online teacher education program. And I had about 30 in one of my classes, which is a really big online course.
It's really big.
And which is great. And I had everything from students who were getting their initial license, 20-year-olds, to women, late 40s, early 50s, going back to school, to people who were on a provisional, and I've got a year to get this done or I'm going to lose my job. And so in that area where the school is, they had a pretty bad storm this year, obviously, as we know. And so the school did a really great job of reacting to that. But just the diversity in their experiences with that, where everything's fine, we're good, or I've had to move in with my parents, or not only are we out of electricity and don't have internet, but my child has RSV and we can't make it to the hospital. I mean, so many different experiences. And I think what you do there is not only do you design your assignments where they're open-ended enough, where all students have the same opportunities to not only be successful, but bring their different experiences to those assignments, but also you have to give grace and you have to understand as the instructor, as the faculty member, you're going to have students with different life experiences, with different life situations. And that is one of the beauties of online is you really you have, as the instructor, you have that agency to say, okay, we can extend a deadline for you, or we can shift this assignment so it's more relevant to you. One of the students reached out to me and said, I have to do this in my class right now. Can I tweak this interactive science board to work for the students for the exact content that I'm working on next week. And I said, go for it. Absolutely. So I think it's the flexibility, but also I think it's so important to go in as an instructor. You have to go in with the mindset that your students are different, and that is an opportunity. That's something to be celebrated. It's not, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And also to push them a little bit to work with each other. I think when you're putting, still do a lot of collaborative work, even in my online courses. And I put students together pretty randomly, unless I have a reason not to. But one of the things I do in those random collaborative assignments is I assign student roles. So I say, okay, for this group, you're going to be the director. You're going to be the passage master. I have all these crazy names for these different roles. And they like that because they have a specific job, and then they know their job's going to change for the next time. So that not only gives them the sort of structured opportunity to work together, but they can bring that diverse set of educational life, work, geographic, whatever experiences to that space, and say, okay, everybody's got a place where we can all learn from each other. So I just think going into it, seeing from the instructor point of view, going into it, seeing it as an opportunity and realizing that is the beauty, not a detriment of online learning.
So it's a combination, if we're trying to design for this online, it's a combination of flexibility and extra rigidity or rules or communication of expectations.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think, the temptation sometimes is to be so flexible, write the paper about anything that we talked about in this class. I just need 6 to 8 pages. Well, that's a really, really bad assignment for all kinds of reasons. Most students are not going to be prepared to take advantage of that in a way that's going to enrich their learning. You don't want to put students randomly in a group and say, do a presentation about whatever, and it needs to be 15 minutes and you need to record it and submit it. By giving them extra guideposts, by giving them a piece of sheet music to read off of, essentially, you enable the kinds of flexibility that I think you're saying affective learning will get us to.
Yeah. And we have, for so long, those of us who think and talk about teaching, we're so long we have used this word differentiation. It's this big scary thing, and it's really not. It's just giving students different ways to demonstrate that they understand a concept. And it's okay that they demonstrate that in different ways. I struggle with people overcomplicating anything, but especially the idea of differentiation. Yes, it's very multi-layered, but if you have a skilled educator and a committed educator, I think differentiation in the online classroom in the online space happens. It almost happens pretty naturally. When I was rereading the white paper, actually last night, one of the notes that I made when I got to sort of the section that was about this that we're talking about now is I remember writing in the margin, choice about choice. That maybe some students really want that sort of open-ended choice for an assignment or a topic or presentation, or are they going to do a infographic or write a traditional paper, or okay, if you need that choice, I'm going to give it to you if the assignment warrants that, right? If it's applicable. Or if you are freaked out by that choice, then I'm going to help you make that choice and say, okay, here's what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, I'm sure that's something someone has already written about at some point, but the whole idea of choice about choice, choice has to be a choice. And so if that doesn't work for you, then we'll figure it out.
Choice is paralyzing if you don't know much ahead of time. I mean, I think about the first time I did any serious traveling in a country where I didn't really speak the language, and I went to a restaurant. I didn't know how to order.
Right.
I didn't speak the language. I didn't know what any of that food was, and I was not much of a foodie at that point in my life. I didn't even know if somebody had told me that's what this is, if I would have liked it. And I really needed somebody to say, you know what, this is what you should. Yeah, it's probably what you should do. I know you. At this point in my life, I've watched a lot of Food Network. Yeah. Done a little bit of cooking. I want somebody to just hand me a menu and say, go to it. But yeah, you're right. Sensitivity to what the different types of students need, what their expertise level is. Younger students are going to need more direction. And by younger, I don't mean 18 versus 30. Right. I mean, younger in terms of experience in the discipline.
Experiences that they, and even, again, admittedly, a lot of my teaching has been with folks who either are pre-service teachers or are renewing licenses or whatever. And you can have those same, for an example, you can have a brand new teacher and a 30-year vet teacher in the same class. They're going to have different experiences to bring to that assignment, and that's awesome. And to have them collaborating in a group, even better, because they can learn from each other. They can, maybe get some of those tried and true ideas for the more newbie teachers and get some fresh new stuff for the vets. So I think that's also important why those collaborative opportunities are so crucial.
I love that. And it's nice because, a 30-year teacher, they're so expert at so many things. And one of the things hopefully they're expert at is managing their own emotional engagement with what's going on in the classroom. They can just be level and roll with things. Mm-hmm. And no new teacher is really like that.
No.
It just takes a while.
Yes. I always said that. I always used to tell my pre-service teachers when I had them in face-to-face every day, I said, there's going to come a moment in year 3 where you're going to look around and say, oh, okay, I got it now. It's going to take that long. And I think it's like that whether you're teaching kindergarten or you're teaching, an upper level higher education history course. It takes a few years for you to really kind of get your mojo. But that affective learning, that's got to be a part of that. You've got to, if you're not thinking about your students and who's in front of you and what they need and what they're bringing that you can use, then teaching is not going to be teaching can be a really miserable experience if you're not going in with that mindset.
Yeah, it's a real gift to get to the confidence level where you can really adjust to almost anything that's happening in front of you. And it takes a little while.
It does, definitely.
Though, I think early on when I was first starting teaching, everything mattered way too much to me. And, if somebody was late to class, I took it personally, like they didn't love me or something like that. They actually just slept over and it had nothing to do with me, so on. But, I started out teaching residentially like a lot of us. You watch faces, you see what's landing and what's not. You see when humor's working and when what you think is funny is not what they think is funny.
It's true. Especially the older I get.
Yeah,
My
there's
references don't work anymore.
There's none of that left.
No, none.
But then you reach a point where you just own it and it's okay.
Yes, right.
You just make jokes about being old.
Yeah.
But we are also building our set of expertise, right? And our different sets of ways to pivot those assignment guidelines. And we're getting better at communicating ahead of time. Like, here's a set of assignment guidelines. Here's our outcomes. Here's where I want you to get. And we are knowing, 2 weeks ahead of time, we need to announce to the students, if this doesn't work for you and you have another idea, you talk to me.
Right.
And that it takes a while.
It does. And it takes a while to be okay with that, to be okay and say, okay. And also understand if you're giving students the opportunity to make that choice to do an alternative assignment, that might be a little more work for you, but look at the result and it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah. So we'll wrap this up pretty soon here. These are some great ideas. Can you think of a moment in your own time when somebody gave you an assignment or an affective learning moment that you recall? I'm just curious.
As a student?
As a student, yeah. Because you're a career educator now.
Yes.
So.
Oh my gosh. I guess I am. Yes. I definitely am. Gosh, I've had so many great teachers. I don't know that this is an assignment, but I do remember I had a pretty rough student teaching experience. I was in a classroom with a woman who was not in a great place personally in her life. I don't think she told me she didn't want a student teacher. She wasn't particularly kind to me. She didn't set things up well for me to be successful in her classroom. And so I went to my advisor, who was also my student teaching supervisor, and said, you're going to have to find me a different place. This is not working. There were tears. I'm not a big crier. And I remember he looked at me and said, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to have to go figure it out. I'm coming to see you on Friday. And I was so angry. But if he had not known me as a student and he had not known what I was capable of, then he would not have said that to me. So not necessarily an assignment, but a very pivotal moment in my education because I thought, in my teacher education, because I thought, oh my gosh, what if this isn't for me? And he believed in me, gave me tough love, which he knew I responded well to. I'm not if you warm and fuzzy me, I'm going to back off. But he was like, I don't want to hear this, Gina, get out. But in a wonderful, very kind in his own way. And it was the best thing he could have said to me. And so he knew me and he gave me what I needed. But then followed up, right? Then he did show up on Friday and we had a long chat and he said, are things better? And I said, well, they are, but I think it's because I've decided that they're going to be. And a couple of things changed in that semester, and I actually ended up having a really, really awesome student teaching experience. It didn't start out great. But if he had not taken that time, and if he had just, past formed me and say, okay, let's get you somewhere else, I may not have been, 20, almost 30-year educator now. So to me, that is, and I'm sure I have 1,000 assignment, examples I could give, but that was really powerful in my educational journey.
No, that's really good. And he kept his focus on the outcomes.
Yes.
And I mean, he did know you.
Yeah.
But I think, sometimes we so much privilege empathy and, making people feel better quickly, that we don't actually achieve what we mean to achieve.
No.
Yeah. For me, I have one. It was my first class in graduate school, and I'd written this paper I was all excited about, and I had, great ideas and, yada, yada, yada. And I turned it in, and I got it back, and it just said, the comment, this is a horrible comment, "This is not prose for the ages."
Oh.
Which was harsh, right?
Yikes.
And this instructor, she's British, and she's so British, So I went to her office. I'm like, "Could you please help me?" And what she said to me, she was actually very kind at the time. I mean, she was like your person, little forthright, but very kind. She said, "You're training to be a professional. You have done 10 weeks of research on this. You know more about this text than I do right now. Teach me."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
My writing changed that day.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's like, oh. So what she did was she said, "You're not occupying the space you're in. You need to be in this other space, and you need to communicate out of that space." That we need to do that for our students so often. I can't tell you how many times, I've set up a group of students to do a presentation, and I've had to say to them, "You know more about this topic than anybody in the class. You have to teach it. Don't get up and read something, teach it." And they do so much better when they feel their own authority.
Yes.
And I think that's part of it, right? Like knowing that you're already, if not an expert, some stuff.
And that's why I think it's so important for us as instructors to learn about our students in the online environment, because then we look for those moments to say, "Oh, I know this about you. Like, bring this in. Make sure you talk about this. Can you comment on this? Can you, when I post the announcement, hey, heads up, when I post the announcement this week, I'd love for you to follow up so everybody can get another chance to look at this experience or example that you offered last week." So that's where kind of making those notes about your students and knowing who they are and what they bring to the table is really, really important. Not only do they appreciate that, but their peers say, "Oh my gosh, I want that to be me." So, they want to have that same kind of spotlight, but also kudos and acknowledgement because you paid attention. And that can happen, I think, just as easily in the online space as it can in the more traditional face-to-face classroom. It just takes that really diligent, as you said, deliberate paying attention by the instructor.
Yeah. Well, great tips, great ideas. I know we always welcome feedback. You can reach us both through Magellan if you'd like to chat this through further. I know Gina's working every day with faculty at one of our client institutions. You're seeing some of these things happening.
Definitely. Absolutely.
It's pretty exciting.
Yes, very exciting.
We're celebrating the first class coming out of one of the graduate programs.
Yes. 26, I think.
26 students.
Yeah, finishing here in a few days. So really, really exciting.
Yeah. TV celebrities among them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is real stuff. It leads to real outcomes. It is hard. We don't want to say it's not hard, but we aren't here to do online learning in a way that's simply quick and easy. We're here to do it in a way that's best in class.
And the same faculty member who said, "Tough it out," for my student teaching, I remember he said in class one day, there's a difference between teaching for 25 years and teaching the same year 25 times. Ooh. And that has always, and I used that in all my pre-service teacher classes. That is a quotable quote because that is so true. Are you just going to do the same thing over again? Or are you going to change and adapt and adjust based on the people in front of you, whether it's in a room with four walls or, a screen that has people from all over the country, from all walks of life, from all different kinds of experiences. So I choose, I think, to be the 20 plus year educator, not the educator that's taught the same year 20 plus times. And so
that's awesome. Well, we're glad to have you on the team.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for the conversation today. We'll be back with you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to our conversation about effective learning in the online classroom. If you enjoyed our talk today or it helped you in your educational journey, Take a moment and leave a review to let us know what you think. Look for other episodes in this series. If you or your school is looking for help with enrollment in marketing, curriculum services, academic operations services, training and professional development, or you need help with a custom solution, think Magellan. Our team would love to help. Find us at thinkmagellan.com and contact us to set up an introductory meeting. Thank you for joining us on the Magellan Podcast, Navigating Education in the 21st Century.